The workshop was a tomb of light and shadow. Rows of dormant engines stretched into the gloom like broken ribs, their chrome surfaces dulled by decades of dust. The air smelled of ozone and metal, the residue of countless failed experiments. Cale Dern sat hunched at his bench, the glow of a single plasma lamp painting deep hollows beneath his eyes. The rhythmic hiss of a malfunctioning coolant line was the only sound that reminded him he was still alive. Outside, the world had long since moved on, the factories automated, the cities verticalized, the mechanics replaced by precision drones. But here, buried beneath the industrial bones of Nova Orion's outskirts, Cale still soldered dreams that no one cared to buy. His hands, once steady and sure, trembled as he tightened a bolt into the fractured housing of an obsolete hover unit. It was a pointless repair, no one used them anymore, yet he couldn't stop. To stop meant silence, and silence had teeth. He'd known it too long since the collapse of the Orbital Gate project, since the explosion that had taken his crew, his partner, and the last purpose he had. The city above still bore the scars of that day, a black ring in the upper atmosphere, flickering with ghost currents of antimatter decay. People called it Cale's Halo, a curse disguised as a name. Rain hammered against the steel shutters. The temperature dropped, and the workshop's generator coughed before settling into a deep mechanical growl. He rose, shoulders heavy beneath his oil-stained coat, and stared through the narrow viewport at the neon veins of the city, the distant hum of airships, the drifting holograms advertising products for lives he would never touch again. A pulse of lightning revealed his reflection, a ghost with iron-gray stubble and eyes dulled by regret. Then came the sound, faint at first, like a claw dragging along the lower hatch. Cale froze. He listened, thinking it was the wind scraping a metal plate loose, but it came again, a deliberate scratch, a weak, desperate rhythm. The sort of sound that suggested something alive was trying to get in. His instinct was to ignore it, nothing good ever came knocking this far out. But as he turned away, a soft whimper, high, trembling, almost childlike, threaded through the storm. Cursing under his breath, he crossed the room, his boots clicking over cold steel. The security panel flickered when he pressed his hand against it, scanning his worn biosignature before releasing the locks. The outer door creaked open, letting in a blast of freezing rain and the hiss of the wind. For a moment he saw nothing, just the shimmer of neon light across puddled ground. Then he noticed it, a small shape curled beneath the threshold, shivering violently. At first glance, it looked like an animal, perhaps a stray pet from the upper districts, but as the lightning flashed again, Cale's breath caught. Tiny, translucent wings twitched against its sides. Scales, not fur, shimmered faintly with bioluminescent patterns, their glow flickering in sync with his workshop's failing lights. A hatchling, but of what, he couldn't say. Its body was marked by burns, its breathing shallow, its eyes half-lidded yet alert with something eerily intelligent. Cale stood motionless, rain pooling around his boots. Every rational thought screamed to shut the door, to leave it to fate. Yet, as another tremor racked the creature's body, something deep within him, the part of him that had once built ships to save lives, moved before his mind could stop it. He bent down, slid his arms beneath the fragile frame, and lifted it carefully. The creature made a faint churring noise, its warmth seeping through his gloves. He carried it inside, away from the storm, and sealed the door. The lights flickered once more. The hatchling stirred, eyes briefly glowing gold, and for the first time in years, Cale's heart skipped a beat. The creature lay on Cale's workbench, wrapped in thermal insulation cloths torn from an old coolant line. It trembled beneath the soft hum of the overhead lamp, its breathing shallow, each exhale producing a faint shimmer in the air, a distortion that bent light like heat above metal. Cale knelt beside it, studying the strange patterns across its scales. They weren't random. The lines pulsed with structured rhythm, fractal and deliberate, like circuitry woven into flesh. He had seen designs like this before. Not in any living thing, but in the archives of the old bioengineering projects that had vanished after the terraform wars. He'd always assumed those reports were myth, propaganda used to justify the guild's planetary cleansing. Now, the myth was breathing on his table. He ran a scanner over its body, the device chirping weakly as it tried to process the data. Its readouts flickered in confusion, energy levels far beyond organic thresholds, core temperature oscillating with quantum variance. Impossible, he muttered, tapping the device, as if it might see sense. The hatchling twitched, its small claws scraping the steel surface. When its eyes opened fully for the first time, Kale staggered back. They weren't eyes in any human sense, they were golden rings of liquid light, shifting and alive, focusing on him with unnerving clarity. For a long moment neither moved. Then the creature emitted a soft sound, a vibration that resonated through the metal floor. The nearest tools rattled, lights dimmed, and somewhere deep in the workshop a dormant generator flickered awake as if responding to the frequency. Kale froze, heart pounding. The energy reading on the scanner spiked, then died. The hatchling slumped, exhausted. He rushed forward instinctively, lowering the lamp's intensity and pressing a damp cloth against one of its burns. The flesh was cool to the touch, but the wound was already knitting together, microscopic filaments sealing over like self-repairing nanomesh. Hours passed in silence. The rain outside subsided into a dull hiss. Kale worked in half-light, disassembling his own machines for parts to build a containment cradle, not a cage, but a support, something that could stabilize whatever strange bioenergy pulsed inside the creature. His hands found purpose again, guided by instinct and forgotten skill. When he finished, the hatchling rested inside a cradle of copper and fiber conduits, its chest rising in steady rhythm. He should have reported it. That was the law. Any unknown organism, especially one with synthetic traits, had to be turned over to the Sky Guild. But Kale knew what that meant. Dissection. Extraction. Erasure. He looked at the tiny form, fragile yet radiant under the dim light, and felt a weight he hadn't known in years, responsibility. As dawn seeped through the narrow viewport, the creature stirred and made a small sound, like static woven with melody. Kale turned toward it, and for an instant, his aging implants picked up something impossible, a faint voice not through sound, but through the mind itself. A thought. A single, broken word that wasn't quite human, but close enough to pierce the quiet of his soul. Cold. Kale stared, his throat dry, uncertain if he had imagined it. But then, slowly, the hatchling shifted closer to the warmth of his hand. He didn't move. He simply let it rest there, its tiny heartbeat syncing with the pulse of the workshop's power core. And in that moment, something flickered alive inside him, a small, dangerous hope. Days passed, blurring into a rhythm Kale hadn't known in years. He woke not to silence but to the faint mechanical hum of the systems he had reactivated to keep the creature alive. The workshop, once a crypt of dead machines, had become something living. The walls flickered with faint glows as if reacting to her presence. Luma, that was the name he'd chosen for her after a long night of staring into those golden eyes that reflected the workshop's dim lights like captured suns. She responded to the name with a curious tilt of her head, as though she recognized herself in it. Her wounds had healed faster than any biological rate he had ever recorded. What had begun as dull, metallic scales were now luminous filaments of blue and silver that pulsed with rhythmic energy. When she stretched her small wings, their membranes shimmered with a soft iridescence that bent the light around her, refracting it into geometric patterns. Kale's scanners couldn't keep up with her readings, every test produced contradictions. She was both organic and synthetic, a living paradox of technology and biology fused seamlessly together. One night, while he was repairing a broken magnetic armature, Luma approached him quietly. Her claws made a delicate tapping sound against the floor, and when she stopped beside him, her gaze fixed on the generator core. Without warning, she pressed her forehead against it. The machine, which had been half dead for months, surged to life. Every light in the workshop flared, then stabilized. The air filled with a low, harmonic vibration that resonated deep in his chest. Kale stepped back, awestruck. The generator wasn't just running, it was synchronizing with her. He began experimenting cautiously. When he connected the workshop's auxiliary circuits to her bioluminescent pulse, energy readings tripled. Power flowed smoother, cleaner, as if her presence filtered chaos into order. She seemed to understand the systems, not through analysis, but intuition. Sometimes she would watch him work, her head lowering as she mimicked his hand movements, her tail flicking in rhythm with the sparks from his tools. It was absurd, yet deeply humanizing. At times, Cale caught her watching the holographic pictures stored on his old datapad, fragments of his past life, his crew, the Gate Project, faces he had long tried to forget. She studied them intently, and when she looked back at him, there was an almost mournful awareness in her eyes, as though she could feel the emptiness behind those memories. That night, as he drifted into uneasy sleep beside the warm hum of his machines, a flicker of static brushed the back of his mind, a faint echo of thought not his own. Cale. The sound of his name, soft yet clear, rippled through his consciousness. He sat up, heart racing. Luma was staring at him, her golden gaze unblinking. He hesitated, his voice hoarse. "Did you?" A ripple of warmth answered him, not in words but in feeling, calm, curiosity, trust. For the first time in years, Cale realized he wasn't alone in his workshop. Something had bridged the hollow between man and machine, between despair and life. He didn't know what she was, or what she might become, but he could feel it now, their fates had already intertwined. The morning broke with a dull, amber haze drifting through the cracks of the workshop shutters. Cale was half asleep at his console, an old datapad flickering before him. For the past 2 nights, he had been analyzing the readings he'd taken from Luma, trying to understand the source of her internal resonance. The data defied every scientific law he knew. Her energy signature wasn't chemical, nor electrical, it was harmonic, existing across multiple frequencies simultaneously, like a song played in several dimensions at once. The deeper he probed, the more his instruments failed. He wasn't studying a creature, he was staring into a living equation. Luma, perched near the reactor core, watched him with quiet intelligence. Her wings had grown, now trailing faint motes of golden light that drifted through the air like dust in sunlight. When she blinked, the entire room dimmed slightly, as though the environment responded to her biological rhythm. It was both beautiful and unsettling. Cale couldn't shake the thought that he was trespassing on something sacred. Then the console chimed. A signal. A coded ping hidden beneath the static of the city's long-range scanners. His eyes narrowed. It was faint, but unmistakable, a guild trace. They were scanning for the resonance pattern that now pulsed gently in his workshop. His breath caught. Somehow, somewhere, the Sky Guild had detected Luma's energy. That meant patrols, drones, and eventually soldiers. He shut the console down immediately, heart hammering. Luma tilted her head, sensing his unease. The faint glow of her scales dimmed to a soft, worried hue. Cale crouched beside her, lowering his voice. "They can't find you," he whispered. "If they do, they'll take you apart piece by piece." She blinked slowly, and he felt again that quiet pulse in his mind, fragments of emotion, wordless understanding. Hide. The hours that followed were a blur of urgency. Cale dismantled half his workshop, creating false readings and decoy energy signatures. He masked Luma's presence beneath layers of ionized shielding, rerouting old circuits to confuse external sensors. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't be enough. The Guild's technology was far beyond what he possessed. They had built orbital weaponry and weather networks, machines that could trace a thought through radiation. As night descended, a deep tremor rolled through the district. Cale looked up sharply. Through the viewport, he saw them, sleek, angular crafts gliding silently through the haze, their undersides pulsing with blue surveillance lights. Drones. At least a dozen. They were sweeping the area, their hum vibrating through the walls like an approaching storm. Luma pressed close to him, trembling faintly. Kale could feel her heartbeat against his chest, faster than before. He moved quickly, pulling a hidden panel open beneath the floor. "In here," he whispered. She hesitated, eyes searching his. "Please," he urged, voice cracking. She slid inside, curling her wings close, the light of her body fading until she was almost invisible. Moments later, a beam of white light cut across the workshop window. Kale turned off every power source, standing in the dark as the drone's scanner swept through. The sound of its mechanical whir was deafening. For a long moment, the beam lingered on his door, then moved on. He exhaled shakily, but even as the light vanished, he knew this was only the beginning. The guild didn't give up. In the silence that followed, Luma's voice brushed his thoughts again, faint but clear. "Run." And for the first time in years, Kale realized he would. The escape began before dawn, when the sky above Nova Orion was a haze of amber and drifting smoke. Kale loaded the few tools he could carry into an old hovercart, its stabilizers whining under the strain. Every vibration of the machine made him flinch, every echo of metal felt like a signal to the guild's drones still circling somewhere beyond the horizon. Luma perched beside him, wings folded tight, eyes glimmering with quiet alertness. She seemed to sense the danger, her body humming faintly with the same energy that had first drawn the guild to them. He had no choice but to rely on her silence. They slipped through the skeletal outskirts of the industrial sector, moving beneath the ruins of old magnetic railways and hollow power conduits. The landscape was dead, ash-gray plains broken by twisted towers and machines half swallowed by sand. Once, Kale had helped build these systems. Now he fled through their graves. Every few kilometers he paused to check his scanner, watching for the faint red arcs that indicated aerial surveillance. Luma would stand still during those moments, eyes scanning the horizon with uncanny precision, her tail twitching in silent tension. By midday, they reached the perimeter fields, vast stretches of desert that had once been agricultural zones before radiation storms rendered them sterile. The air shimmered with static, distorting the view of the distant mountains. Kale adjusted his respirator, feeling the sting of dust on his skin. His hands were blistered, his breath shallow, but Luma remained strong. She glided beside the cart effortlessly, her wings catching sunlight in flashes of molten gold. At a collapsed transport station, Kale stopped to rest. The silence there was oppressive, broken only by the faint buzz of his scanner. Luma moved among the ruins, touching the remains of broken machines with a strange curiosity. When her claws brushed against a rusted data core, it flickered to life for the first time in decades, glowing with residual light. Kale stared in disbelief, her energy was reviving dead technology. He crouched beside her, eyes wide as the machine projected faint holograms of blueprints into the air, schematics for something ancient, a power matrix labeled Ether Core, Prototype 03. He felt his stomach twist. He knew that name. It was the same technology that had powered the orbital gate before the explosion, the same project that had destroyed his life. Somehow, Luma's energy matched the lost ether formula. That meant she wasn't just a creature, she was living evidence of the guild's forbidden experiments. He turned toward her, voice barely a whisper. "They made you." She looked at him with those golden eyes, so alive, so aware, and he felt the thought resonate through him again, softer this time. "No, they tried." The sky above darkened suddenly. Kale's heart seized. He looked up and saw it. 3 guild interceptors breaking through the clouds, their silver hulls gleaming with artificial sunlight. They had found them. The ground shook as beams of light lanced downward, cutting through the ruins. Kale grabbed Luma's arm, pulling her toward the half-buried tunnels beneath the station. Explosions tore through the sand behind them. The hovercart disintegrated in a flash of blue fire. Kale stumbled, coughing, dragging Luma into the shadows. The air smelled of ionized metal and burning ozone. For a moment, everything went white. Then he felt a surge of warmth, Luma's body glowing fiercely beside him. The world trembled. When the dust cleared, the guild's drones were gone. Only scorched glass remained where they had stood. Luma's eyes dimmed, her breath shallow, but she still looked at him, faintly smiling. Kale stared at her in awe and terror. Whatever she had just done wasn't defense, it was power beyond comprehension. And for the first time, he feared what the guild feared, that she was becoming something far greater than either of them understood. Night fell with a trembling silence, the kind that comes after destruction. The air above the wasteland still shimmered faintly from the energy Luma had unleashed. Kale sat beside her under the fractured dome of an abandoned relay tower, his trembling hands pressed against her chest to feel the slow rhythm of her pulse. She was alive, but barely. The glow of her veins had dimmed to a faint blue, her breathing shallow. He had tried to seal the wounds along her wings with plasma gel, but it wasn't enough. She needed power, more than he could ever provide. In the distance, the guild ships hovered like cold stars, cautious now, keeping their distance after witnessing what she could do. They were waiting, calculating. He knew they wouldn't stop until they had her. Kale looked down at the small creature who had once been nothing more than a dying hatchling on his doorstep and felt something inside him break. He couldn't lose her, not after everything she had awakened in him. He turned to the relay's central console, a relic of the old energy grid. The systems were dead, but the main capacitor remained intact. If he could reroute its last reserves and amplify the current through his portable core, he could transfer the remaining charge directly into her body. It might revive her, or kill them both. He didn't care. His fingers flew over the controls, sparks lighting the air as he forced the decayed machine to breathe again. Luma stirred, her voice brushing faintly against his thoughts. Kale, stop. He shook his head, teeth gritted. You gave me back my life, he said. Now let me give you yours. He pressed his palm against the console, completing the circuit. The surge hit him like fire. Electricity poured through his arms, blinding light flooding the room. Luma cried out, her body arching as energy cascaded into her, her wings unfolding wide enough to touch the walls. The air filled with golden light, alive, pulsing, beautiful. The tower shuddered as a deep resonance spread outward, rippling through the landscape. Guild scanners malfunctioned, their ships faltered, systems collapsing under the surge. Kale fell to his knees, his body failing, but his eyes never left her. She was changing, her form expanding, her light growing impossibly bright. When she finally rose, she was no longer a hatchling but a radiant being of energy and flesh, her wings casting arcs of light across the wasteland. She looked down at him, eyes filled with sorrow and gratitude. You were never meant to fix machines, her voice whispered in his mind. You were meant to heal a world. He smiled weakly. Then start with yourself. She reached out, her touch gentle, and in that moment, Kale felt warmth, not the heat of power, but life. The pain faded, the darkness eased. When he opened his eyes again, she was gone, vanished into the starlit sky, leaving behind only a faint golden trail that shimmered across the horizon. Days later, Novo Orion awoke to something miraculous. The smog had cleared, power grids reignited, and the once dead air thrummed with clean energy. No one knew why. Only the wind carried whispers of light seen soaring through the night, something vast and alive, circling the ruined halo in the upper atmosphere. Far below, among the ashes of the wasteland, Kale's workshop lights flickered on once more, powered by a soft, golden pulse that never faded.